So, when you hear the word power, what pops into your head? Probably armies, right? Economic muscle? The sheer ability to tell someone what to do? For centuries, that's been the playbook. But in the world we live in now, this super-connected, information-drenched world, a totally different kind of power is moving to the forefront. It's one that's way less about force and a whole lot more about fascination. And this shift totally reframes a question that philosophers and kings have been asking for a very, very long time.
You've probably heard this one before. More than 4 centuries ago, Machiavelli put this to the princes of Italy. And his advice? It was pretty clear. Fear is way more reliable than love. This idea that real power is about being feared, about coercion, has basically dominated how we think about strength ever since. But what if that's not the whole story anymore?
All right, to really get this shift, we first have to break down the old rules of the game, the traditional definition of power that, pretty much everyone used to play by. And that brings us to what we call hard power. It's command power. It's the direct approach, Using your military might, that's the stick, or your economic influence, that's the carrot, to make others do what you want. You say jump, and they jump. Simple. Either because they're afraid of what happens if they don't, or they're tempted by the reward if they do.
And traditionally, this is how we've kept score. We look at the tangible stuff, the things you can actually count. How big is your army? How rich is your economy? How much land and how many resources do you control? The thinking was, the country with the biggest numbers was the most powerful. Seemed pretty straightforward, right?
Well, not so fast, because if you look at history, it's filled with these bizarre moments where the side with all the high cards, all that hard power, somehow still lost the game. And that, right there, is the paradox of power. This really leads us to the critical question. If having all these resources is all that matters, why do we see super powerful nations fail to get what they want time and time again?
Just think about it for a second. In the Vietnam War, the United States had military and economic resources that just dwarfed the other side, yet it couldn't win. And fast forward to 2001, the world's only superpower, with absolutely unmatched hard power, couldn't stop the devastating 9/11 attacks. See, these aren't just flukes. They're huge clues that our old definition of power is missing something big.
And here's the crucial insight. Power resources aren't like money. You can't just cash them in to solve any problem you want. Having a gigantic army doesn't actually help you all that much in a trade negotiation. It's like having a winning poker hand when the game is chess. It's useless. The context, the specific game being played, is what determines which resources actually matter. So, all of this leads us to the solution to the paradox. It's this other face of power, a much more subtle, indirect force that has become incredibly important in our world. It's called soft power.
Soft power is what you might call co-optive power. See, it's not about forcing people to do something, it's about shaping what they want in the first place. It grows from the attractiveness of a country's culture, its political values, its policies. When other countries admire you and want to be like you, well, you don't have to spend nearly as much on those sticks and carrots. And this chart here lays it out perfectly. On one end of the spectrum, you've got the command behaviors of hard power, coercion and payments. But on the other end, you have the co-opt behaviors of soft power, things like setting the agenda and just pure attraction. It's a whole continuum, from twisting someone's arm to winning them over. Okay, let's put them side by side to make it even clearer. With hard power, your currency is force and money, and that leads to behaviors like coercion and payments. But with soft power, the currency is totally intangible. A country's culture, its values, its policies. The behavior it creates is attraction, getting others to willingly go along with your goals.
As Joseph Nye, the scholar who really developed this whole concept, put it so well, seduction is always more effective than coercion. It's the difference between a threat and an invitation. And in the world today, that invitation is often way, way more powerful.
So, why has this second face of power become so incredibly important today? Well, for modern democracies especially, the cost of actually using military force has skyrocketed. We're talking casualties, we're talking moral justification, and we're talking economic risk. And this has happened alongside 2 massive global trends: the way conflict is changed and the information revolution. First up, technology has led to something that's been called the privatization of war. Just think about it. The tools of mass destruction are getting smaller, cheaper, and way easier to get your hands on. And what that means is that small groups, even individuals, can now cause the kind of damage that once took a whole government and an army to pull off. And this is where it gets fascinating. These groups know they can't compete head-to-head with traditional military power, so they don't even try. Instead, they rely heavily on their own brand of soft power. They use an attractive, even if it's a destructive, story to recruit followers and get support. And that means fighting them isn't just a military job, it's a battle of ideas. You have to offer a better, more compelling story.
Now, that second huge trend is the information revolution. We're living in an age of total information overload, which has created this very modern problem called the paradox of plenty.
So, what does that mean? It means that while there's a flood of information out there, there's only a tiny, finite amount of human attention to go around. Suddenly, attention itself has become the scarce resource. Just getting heard above all that noise is the new name of the game.
The big takeaway here is that in this new environment, power flows from credibility. Whose story wins? Who do people believe? A nation's credibility is now one of its most valuable assets. If you lose it, your ability to influence, to persuade, and to attract others just craters, no matter how big your army is.
Now, this doesn't mean hard power is obsolete. Far from it. The real key to success in the 21st century isn't about choosing one or the other. It's about skillfully blending them together. And this brings us to our final concept, smart power.
Smart power is the synthesis. It's recognizing that in today's messy, complex world, you need a full toolbox. It's about knowing when to use military force or economic sanctions, and when to lean on diplomacy, culture, and values to get things done. It's really about being both feared and loved.
The most effective foreign policy isn't a hard power policy or a soft power policy. It's a smart one. It's knowing you have both of these tools and having the wisdom to know which one to pull out of the toolbox and when.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question for our time. As we face down these huge, complicated challenges, from global terrorism to climate change to information warfare, the real test of leadership is going to be this. How do you skillfully combine the hard power of the stick with the soft power of the smile? The answer to that question will define who really holds power in the century to come.